God, what is happening? What have we done? Why did we let people play our game so early? This was never supposed to happen. It's all ruined. A while ago, we decided to let you play our game Animalkind early in our first. Yes, first implies that there will be a second. Pay attention to the rest of this video for more info on that. Our first closed alpha test. The first alpha was a huge benchmark for us and was something all of us were working toward for over a year, and it is terrifying, utterly bone-chilling stuff to suddenly put your game that you've been working on for so long into people's hands, especially this early, and knowing that it's not complete and that there's a lot of warts. Will players understand? Will they break everything? It's only like a handful of us who even playtested this game so far. We could have overlooked something important. And you know, it turns out that fear was justified because, well, we did overlook something important and accidentally gave players the tools to completely break reality. But sometimes, you just gotta take the plunge. Yeah, we're gonna learn a little bit of undergrad level design stuff today, baby. Oh, and that bug? Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Don't worry. There's a lot of reasons to be terrified when you're putting your game in front of real players for the first time, but probably nobody has more reason for their blood to run cold than the art director. Art, after all, is literally the first thing players interact with, well before just about anything else, and players are notoriously difficult to predict. Will they like our art? Will they hate it? Who knows? Not us! But you do, and you form those opinions about our games tremendously quickly, almost instantly in fact, and nothing captures the power of this initial gut reaction more than the word pragnans. Pragnans is a feature of Gestaltism, a theory of perception that has seen its original prominence and application in the world of psychotherapy diminish and shift over time, but remains a cornerstone of design philosophy precisely because of how axiomatic it is in articulating how we soak in the world around us. A direct English translation is a bit tricky, but it's known plainly as the law of simplicity, but it also means pithiness and carries subtext of order and symmetry. Pragnans has its own sub-laws, the laws of proximity, similarity, closure, common fate, continuity, and the law of past experience. We can't go over each of these in detail today or we'll literally be here forever. To learn more, consider going to college or getting a master's degree in design or psychology or philosophy. Anyway, let's pick two. Laws of similarity and... I can't pick. I love you all so much. You are my babies. How can I choose a favorite? Law of closure. Get dunked on, everyone else. These are the two guiding principles we're going to talk about, but like super high level. If you want to know more, maybe become an architect. Actually, one second. Let me look something up real quick. Yeah. Median salary of $93,000 with a batch degree after an internship and 8% growth projected over the next 10 years and almost 10,000 new jobs? Beats learning JavaScript. What were we talking about? Oh, right. Gestalt, Pragnans, Animalkind. We're focused. We're here. We're going to talk about why being an art director is horrifying. The whole game hangs in the balance, Heather. Do not let us down. Actually, before we talk about the cool stuff, that's a good point. Heather, hey, how long did you have to come up with a cohesive character design for our game?
Honestly, I had planned on just spending like a few months doing some style explorations to really nail down what we wanted for our game. But I ended up having to cram that in about a week.
Yeah, so no pressure, huh? We'll check back in with Heather in a bit, but first let's actually articulate the challenges Heather is up against leading up to our alpha and why so much of its success rested on her shoulders. Because players, well, people are very quick to judge things. It's not a bad thing. This is the sort of thing that has saved lives throughout our entire history. Moldy bread? Don't eat it. Oh, wait, it was blueberries. Psych, it was mold. Gotcha. Bam, you're dead now. You don't even think about all the pattern-based assessments you're making most of the time. It just happens in the background. We're the same way about art, it turns out, where our snap judgments are quick and often pretty precise. Let's talk a little bit about how that works. First up under Pragnans is the law of similarity, which is the idea that we psychologically group things together that are both close in proximity to each other and share common traits. This can be very literal in the sense that we see things in the world that are similar and close by and group them together, like this patio furniture being the same material in the same pattern so you know that they belong together. But it also happens in our minds. Subconsciously, we as players look for themes and stylistic consistency that aligns with our personal tastes or expectations. These styles and themes are often repeated throughout art and entertainment and are strongly linked to one another inside our very minds, such as muted palettes and gothic architecture, ominous or even minimalist sound design, all being elements of one particular game genre. If a style and theme are inconsistent, even if technically well done, they can create a dissonance in our minds that is uncomfortable, and that can make us reject something outright before we've even given it a real chance. And all of this is information that's communicated visually and immediately.
Well, yeah, I definitely had to hit the ground running when I came in. My very first month was really spent ramping up on what they wanted to build for the project, seeing what was already in the game. It was honestly like a lot of temporary assets, so I really kind of had to start from scratch a little bit. So what I did was I talked to the leadership team to talk about what was most important in our alpha, and we definitely wanted our own characters to be in the game. The characters and the mech were the most important part. When you establish the designs for those characters, that helps build out the art direction for the rest of the world as well. And that was a really unique challenge as well, because the mech originally was very warlike and definitely did not meld well with cutesy little animals, so I wanted to make sure that our mech felt like it was a part of the same world, used the same shape language as our adorable little animals. And I ended up wanting the design to feel like it was designed for animals, so you could, like, the interior of it is inspired by pet beds, so it feels like it's made specifically to protect and take care of your cutesy little animal.
Yeah, our game was mostly made out of temporary placeholder assets we were using to build our mechanics around so they weren't just a blank gray void, and we were staring down the barrel of opening up the game to people so we could see their first impressions. But the most important part, the part they look at, wasn't our stuff. With the clock ticking down and only a few months to go before the alpha, Heather had to make really difficult choices about what would do the best job communicating, via the laws of similarity, what our game was even about. So she decided to focus on the two most important components: the animals themselves and the mech they ride around in. That's where I have to talk to you about our second principle of Prognons, the law of closure. This one is really easy to visualize. Take this series of lines. What is it? That's right.
It goes in the square hole.
Humans, as creatures whose entire success as a species can probably be summarized as we're extremely good persistence hunters and have the best pattern recognition in the solar system, have a tendency to process things completely even if we're missing pieces. It's basically how Who's That Pokemon works.
It's Pikachu! It's Clefairy!
This isn't just visual, though. We do this with lots of things in our minds, even the ephemeral, like ideas. People will instinctively fill in thematic gaps to interpret art, which is good for us when we're making a game and it's still in progress, but we still functionally need enough clarity to anchor everyone's imaginations. Would the animals, mechs, and later the houses be enough for players to grok what we're doing, or would it fall short and leave people looking at a series of disjointed lines on a page and kill any interest people had in our game before they even began to move? We want players to instantly grasp what's possible in our world through our art design, but what happens when that expectation breaks down completely? When suddenly items can be stacked into an eldritch spire defying all known laws of physics? What will their assessment of our game be then? People use these heuristics every day, and it makes our lives tremendously easy, and we can use a lot of them as game designers to give us a leg up with our process, since people's brains are already meeting us halfway. But when the very first frame of a game informs these shorthand gut reactions, a lot hangs in the balance, and with a studio as small as ours, that's a lot of pressure on one person who has to get stuff ready in just a few months. Would it be enough? Would our incoherency be a total disaster? Would anybody even play our game? And if they hate it, what do? We might be screwed, because that's months of work, arguably a year's worth if you consider everything else. That all has to be thrown in the trash. It's a petrifying prospect. Our entire game hinges on the emotional through line that is sewn into it by our art design, and a rejection of that premise could have an echoing, cascading impact down to the very foundations of our play space. But it gets worse. Okay, so frame 1 judgments are a problem for Heather to solve. What about what happens after the first frames? How do we get people to play for 100,000 frames, or 400,000, or even 1,000,000 frames? Video games, after all, they're not movies, they're games. The art direction is what serves as the ludo-narrative anchor, of course, and that's the window through which you view the ludic space. What's that word, by the way? Ludic? Ludo? Clatupranicto. Ludo is used by a lot of people to sound smart, but it just means to play, and ludic means play full. This is a game, therefore it is ludic. Words are fun. Anyway, the art is the window through which you view the game, but it's not the game on its own. Now, for that, you need something more, something to support all that you see going on your screen. You need structure. Things can't just look good, they have to have function, or functionalität, the word central to the Bauhaus movement of architectural design that emphasizes that a space made for humans can't just look good, but it has to be functional. It must have utility. All this drapery on the surface is meaningless if the underlying skeleton is a disaster. Old games like Mancala, the Royal Game of and chess can't really break in the way modern games can. They're played on a board where the mechanics that govern them are the rules that everyone decides to follow together. The rest is maybe some dice and the act of picking a piece up and placing it somewhere. But modern games, even simple ones like Pong, have way more rules than even the most complex board games. And fun fact, the original Pong wasn't even coded in a specific language. It was actually all coded through discrete chips on a board. It was all circuits and stuff. It's freaking wild. These are the original schematics. Anyway, video games have thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of more rules, and they're running them all multiple times a second. Our game redraws the entire screen every 16.6 milliseconds and runs several hundred lines of logic with that redraw. That's super fast. All of this can break at any moment for any number of reasons, whether due to coding errors, hardware we didn't account for, or if we're really unlucky, gamma rays from the sun flipping bits in your hardware. We're just a handful of people on different devices, and Animalkind's first alpha was run on PC, which is actually blood-curdling. PCs can come in literally millions of variations of hardware combinations, and with just a handful of us playing the game with our few machines, having to account for every possible variation of logic parsing that could be different on different configurations, it is, well, it's actually impossible.
That's kind of the main challenge of building games on PC, and mainly building games not on console, is that you don't really have any guarantee on hardware. You can imply minimum specs and things like that, but at the end of the day, there's, thousands and thousands of different OEMs out there with different combinations of hardware and software differences as well. It's very, very hard to pin down bugs, particularly when they are some combination of operating system, hardware, maybe what other software is installed on a machine.
And even within our studio, there was this bug that would happen on my machine only, where after leaving a world and trying to hop into another one, it'd get this infinite loading screen that would eventually just turn black. And drilling down what was causing that and testing it was a massive pain.
Yeah, I remember that infamous connection, or rather reconnection bug. It haunted me for several months leading up to the alpha, and we didn't actually get it fixed until, I don't even think it was a week before, I think it was literally the day before we were about to go live, that we got a suitable version prepared. The problem with that was it wasn't a consistent repro for the longest time, and it wasn't until the eve of the alpha that I got a solid, consistent repro on it and had a clear idea of what could have been causing it, which led to some frantic refactoring the day before. That ended up going quite well, all things considered, but we basically shifted around how we were handling the setup and teardown of the netcode in a pretty substantial way.
This brings up the other challenge we faced. Our game is multiplayer, which creates so many more ways the game can break. This is the model Hisham drew showing how our multiplayer system works. Yeah, each of those lines, they're a place that things can break. And if those things break, literally any of those lines, people cannot play our game, and they sit around waiting forever, which leads to frustrations and people quitting before they've even given the game a chance. They may not even get to the point where they can see the art that's so important for forming those first impressions, let alone getting to engage with the mechanics. And hey, if you want to see a more detailed breakdown of that sheet of paper and how our multiplayer works and the ways we plan on making it more robust in the future, be sure to subscribe to our channel and let us know you're interested in the comments, and maybe we'll get around to it, because it is actually really freaking cool. This is just the basic structure of how games work, but there's also the underlying mechanics that form the framework of the game itself, and these have to be good, not just not broken. Art and design are the skin and muscles, but the code, that's the skeleton keeping everything upright. The ludic skeleton, if you will. Remember that word from earlier? The bones of the play experience. Everything from run speed, jump height, terrain generation, all of it has to be, well, okay, not perfect because it's an alpha, but it's got gotta be good. And it definitely cannot break. Even small coding tweaks matter and have rippling effects everywhere. One misplaced assumption and your players have invented their own space programs by stacking beds, houses, and trees into the sky. It's pretty cool, but it's also a literal nightmare for a designer. And so many things could have broken. Like our dialogue system that Brent and Brian cooked up together with Colin in, hold on, Brian, how did your schedule end up working out?
We started 2 weeks later than we expected, and it was only scoped to take about 2 weeks to begin with. So by the time we were getting started, we were already supposed to be done.
Oops. That sounds bad. Well, at least it was done.
So one of the fun things about our dialogue system is it's what's called a client-side system, and our game has a server component. And the way that the dialogue system interacts with the server component worked differently in the wild when we were working with the actual builds of the game than it did when we were working within Unity. And when I say that, what I mean is it didn't work at all.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine, right? I mean, everything not working when you're already 2 weeks behind schedule and a lot of your player advancement is locked behind dialogue in a system that, frankly, at this time wasn't built for that. Oh, boy! Oh, right. And the Fatui. Oh, you don't know what a Fatui is? I didn't know what a Fatui was either when I first started here, so let me enlighten you. FTUE, or Fatui, is the first-time user experience. All of us making Animalkind are pretty familiar with it, so we can't just throw it at players, especially mid-progress, and be like, here you go! We have to teach people how to play. The reason we use Fatui instead of tutorial is that it's an umbrella term. Tutorials are a part of a Fatui, but not necessarily required. It kind of varies from game to game, and dialogue is a core component of the Fatui in Animalkind, where we did decide to go with a tutorial, at least in the first alpha. And all of it hinged on a system held together with duct tape and string. The servers could crash, the code could break, the players could hate the art or the jump height or the dialogue could desync and nobody will get out of the tutorial, or a gamma ray burst from a dying star could float down and turn all of our ones to zeros, and then the players will blame us as they die from radiation poisoning and... Okay, that's a lot to manage. In a lot of ways, we could have made players angry or frustrated, and justifiably so. I know I'd be angry if a game I was playing didn't work. The thing with bugs, and particularly game-breaking bugs, is that they can actually define your game if you let them. A lot of people think that the minimum bar to leap over for a game is that it be fun and well-designed, but this actually is not the case. The minimum bar is that it has to work. Literally no other goal can be met if there are too many obstacles in the way of the game actually moving, and there's so many moving pieces that have to interlock with one another, and if even one piece gets out of step, the whole thing could come tumbling down and lay at our feet as a pile of nothing but rubble and player resentment. This was our fear, next to the idea that nobody would have any interest in playing our game at all. Apathy, anger, hatred, frustration, all of these are things we worried about leading up to the alpha, and everything was coming down to the wire. We fixed a lot of problems by the time we were ready to launch our alpha. Day zero bug fixes, patching our dialogue system together with scotch tape, praying our last-minute animations held together, sweating bullets as we got closer and closer to finally pressing that button and seeing if all this work we'd been doing for over a year was even worth it. Totally unaware of the looming threat of players who were ready to break our building system and utterly sick to our stomachs. However, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something is more important than fear. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious, well, the cautious don't live at all. And we don't plan to live forever. So, we press the button. We press the button and let players into our game for the first time, expecting the worst and hoping for the best. That's all we could do. Would people hate the art and reject all of Heather's hard work? Would the first few players on machines we'd never tested on before find the game unplayable? Would the servers break in any of the dozens of ways that they could? Would it all be for naught? Would our studio crumble? Would we all be fired? Would our game go in the garbage? We pressed the button, and like soldiers geared to leap into no man's land, we braced for impact, and... Wait, it's not broken? The game is actually working? Heck yeah, baby, we did it! Mission accomplished! Yeah! The impact we were braced for never came. It whizzed right past us, probably striking some other poor indie dev right in the chest. But we were alive. We checked the logs, no fires, no catastrophic failures, no angry mobs at our doorstep. Pickles was still locked in the ruins of the Groove Shark offices and was leaving our servers alone. The art, people loved it. Turns out Heather is kind of great at her job. And the engineering, well, I mean, it broke a little bit, but a hotfix came in like that, and it was all gone. Players actually liked playing our game a lot, and even though there wasn't a ton of content this first go-around, people kept coming back, sometimes for hours and hours. People, it turns out, generally understand what a work in progress is, and were really understanding about our few shortcomings. The servers never broke, partially because we only actually let people trickle in instead of just opening the floodgates, which is what some of us wanted, but Hasham wouldn't let us flip the switch. Dude was like Gandalf sitting there while Brian and I were the Balrog. Bro was just like, "You shall not pass!"
You see it a lot with games that launch either in early access or even at full launch, where they might not have the server capacity to keep up with the demand. And I empathize deeply with those devs because it's a very difficult problem to solve while you're in the situation. So I wanted to stay ahead of that and make sure that A, we were well prepared for that, and B, we weren't like, heads on fire while the launch was happening. And the best way to do that is to make sure we set the expectations early of what we can handle and what we want out of the play test. There's so many cases of like you open the floodgates and immediately the servers topple over, and then you kind of get stuck in this loop of you add more servers and then those servers will fall over because the demand of people waiting is like accumulating. So I just wanted to make sure that we didn't run into that scenario in, the very first time someone was seeing our game.
All right. Okay. Fair point. Especially considering a lot of things weren't automated or redundant at the time. I get it. Stupid Hisham being right all the time about stuff and always having perfect hair. Just butthead. That's ultimately what won out, however. Yes, things didn't go horribly wrong for us this time, but that's because we were prepared-ish. The truth is you can never be prepared for everything, but what does matter is planning, and more planning, and ultimately relying on your team. Building a game like ours is a monumental task, and you cannot do it alone unless you're that guy who made Stardew Valley. So in the end, you have to trust one another. Without trust, I mean, the whole thing falls apart. Oh, and what about that bug from the very beginning of the video with the Mount Doom? The one that made our game look like an abstract art piece made entirely out of Dr. Seuss's nightmares? Yeah, it's time to talk about that. And it turns out, it was all Steven's fault. When in doubt, blame the studio head.
Especially the period right before alpha, I was often just jumping in, kind of helping polish. Like, okay, a system works, but it would be really nice if it worked this way. Or, last minute, we had this issue with item stacking where they couldn't stack all of a sudden because of some other code that we had put in. So I jumped in and got them stacking. Now, whether items stack or not wasn't crucial to the alpha, but it did have this importance to me that players could be creative with how they put items on top of each other and kind of express whatever they want to express with these building pieces. And so I was able to go and do that because everyone else was pretty busy with all their major tasks around game stability and actually finishing the thing. My original thought around stacking was it'd be cool if you could put a few barrels on top of each other. It's aesthetic, you would put that out near your garden. But then someone, of course, creates only up or, this tower of chaos. And yeah, it was possible because of stacking. So that was cool.
So, people liked it, the art was cute and well received, and we got over 10 times the number of alpha signups we were shooting for. We climbed the horrific Ashurian mountain of beds, rocks, and refrigerators and reached the summit of the garbage pile. But there's so much higher yet to go. Maybe this wasn't our happy ending. Maybe we didn't push hard enough. Maybe we got good reception because we played it safe. Maybe this is a sign that we gotta really cut loose and give in to our wildest impulses.
If I were to talk about my third fear, it would be that we don't generate enough meaningful data out of the alpha. That the answers, the data that we get, whether it's subjective or objective through our stats, tell us nothing. Nothing positive, nothing negative. It's just kind of in this neutral gray zone. That would be kind of rough.
The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. Was it actually a success after all? It's hard to say. Our story, and by extension the story of Animalkind, is still being written. And maybe you can help write it with us. This alpha was just the prologue. It's time for the real story to begin. Alpha 2 is coming, and it's going to be bigger than Alpha 1. And it's literally right around the corner. It's gonna blow your socks off. If you want in, go to our Steam page right now and apply to be a playtester. It's as simple as a single button press. You're not gonna let a single button press stand between you and being the next person to utterly break our game in 1,000 ways we couldn't predict, are you? I dare any of you to one-up our last round of alpha players before the clock runs out. I have been Austin, this is Animalkind, and I'll be seeing you soon.